Safety, very important. Whether you're putting up antennas or doing grounding, know your terrain. When you go outside to put an antenna up, start looking up. Start looking for power lines, tree branches, overhangs from the house, metal gutters. I know a lot of people have gone to the plastic, but there's still metal gutters out there. Those metal gutters are conductors. If you bring your coax off the roof and down over a metal gutter, you could have some problems because it's going to interfere. Also act as an electrode going either direction. The other problem is if a power line is close to one of those and they break off and fall down on the power line, your gutter just became energized. Real simple. I know I've had a couple of fire calls on that you get to the fire and you're going to send guys up on the roof. Well, the first thing you do, of course, is look around again. And it goes for you in life. When you're going to, especially when you're hanging HF wires, long wires as they're called. If you put up a G5 RV antenna, you need 120 feet. So you're going to have to look the whole length, usually, of a property in a city, as they run anywhere from 120 to 150. So it's kind of hard sometimes to put up a 125 foot.
And you want to watch too, in case, let's say there's a high wind or something, the antenna breaks, where could that go? Because it's 100 and something feet long. It could swing over and the wind hit a power line that you're not even intending. Like my house, I just moved into a new place. I can't do a vertical because anywhere on my house that I put it, if it fell over, there's a chance it could hit a power line. So you want to watch that. It may only be 20, 30 feet tall, but if it comes down, is there any chance that it can hit the power line? You want to watch out for that.
And in my property, I've got 150 by 80, and if the line would break south end of the house, that means there's tension to pull it to the north end of the house. Well, behind the house, between properties, that's where the power lines are. So that line could go up there, and it could feed right back through, past the one thing they didn't show in here. You should have polyphasers. That's a brand name, but should have insulators that will cut out if there's any kind of a lightning strike, power strike, or anything. And the one thing to remember with lightning arresters, anything you put there to stop the lightning, sometimes it don't work. And the reason is, people don't understand, lightning has so much voltage behind it, and the speed, you got to remember, lightning is the fastest thing out there. So it's going to travel. And sometimes that microsecond it takes for the line inside to break so that it doesn't go any farther, the lightning could already passed. So it's a helper. 95% of the time, it works. Okay, what's so dangerous about electricity? Well, electrical current flowing through the body is a primary concern with electrical shock. The answer, flowing through the body presents these health hazards. It may cause injury by heating tissue. It may disrupt the electrical function of cells. It may cause involuntary muscle contractions. Well, the one part may disrupt the electrical functions. Remember, your heart is working basically as a dipole antenna, and it takes pulses to give you the positive, negative beat. So that's how your heart beats. It shows there a typical house, kid playing with the knives into there. So dangerous. Source of shock hazards are common in Radio Shack equipment. Another answer, a hazard exists in the power supply immediately after turning it off from charge stored in filter capacitors. Man, can't emphasize that enough. Just because you turn the radio off doesn't mean it can't kick you. And it kicks bad too, to the point of...
We talked about that during the component.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. We don't need it anymore then.
That's quintessential safety. Make sure the power's off, make sure it's unplugged, make sure it's got time to dissipate the charge.
Your best bet, if you're gonna work at 2 meter 440, especially HF, if you gotta take the cover off because a fuse blew or something, pull the cord from the wall, go get a cup of coffee or a pop or something for 10 minutes, at least. Give it a chance. And another good practice is key the mic.
Press the power button. Yeah, try
Yeah,
to get it to
that's
use that power
what I was taught, was always try to turn it back on again after you unplugged it.
Yeah, just,
Yep,
if you're gonna take that cover off,
yep.
I mean, it'll bite, and it bites hard.
Yep, the safety piece of that, of the electrical shock, think about what an AED is.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so now instead of doing it to restart your heart, you're doing it to stop your heart.
Yeah.
And so paying attention to the electrical pieces of all of this is paramount for safety.
I had a heart problem back in '93, and the heart electrician up here, Toski, when he found out I was a ham, he went almost berserk. He says, "Man, I've been looking for somebody like you." He says, "I'm going to keep you awake." Oh, yeah, what do you know home? But he says, "I want to know what this feels like and if I'm doing it right or wrong." But he did take it out. Because as he explained to me in the third week of conception, they're called mind fibers, and they can separate off of one or the positive or the negative side in the heart and float. I had a friend that had 28 of them. We had a senior girl, thin, she had over 30. They sent her to Ann Arbor finally, couldn't finish it. Okay, how can hams protect against electrical shock? To guard against electrical shock at your station, use 3-wire cords and plugs for all AC powered equipment. Connect all AC power station equipment to a common safety ground. Install mechanical interlocks in high voltage circuits. Install a fuse or circuit breaker in 120 volt power circuits in series with a hot conductor only. Okay, another answer is in the United States, black wire installation is a 3-way 120 volt cable indicating the hot circuit. So always remember black is hot, white is neutral, and green or copper is ground.
If you're plugging things in, especially for radios, especially base stations, things like that, go through your house and make sure there are no 2-prong adapters, no 2-prong extension cords, no 2-prong, any of those things. Make sure that it's grounded properly, and look at your wall socket. A lot of what we find fire service is somebody went in and put a grounded socket without grounding it.
Yeah.
And then you start plugging in, things that are drawing that 120, and all of a sudden you've got no ground for it to go anywhere, and you're starting that fire.
Saturday, I'll bring in, you can go down to Harbor Freight, they're inexpensive. A little unit about that way, 3-prong, you plug it in, and it'll tell you if you're wired properly and if you got a ground.
Yep.
Simplest thing, I've got 2 of them. I keep one in the house and one in the car.
Are you guys local?
Yeah.
Toski?
Yeah.
Ish?
Oh, about a block that way.
Okay, so the fire downtown a year ago, that really pretty house on the corner,
Yeah.
do we know how it started? Somebody plugged their Tesla into a 1950s outlet in the garage.
That'll do it.
Oh,
So it wasn't the Tesla technically, it was the 1950 outlet in the garage that was not grounded and burned out about $3.8 million.
Not saying that others You can take out finals, you can take out a front end, I mean, besides burn the house down.
And like my radios in my car, I do fuses at the battery and at the radio as well. You never know when something could get rubbed, chafed, something like that, cause a short. It doesn't, you're gonna save your equipment, and it's gonna save you a lot of money. So it doesn't hurt those $2, $3 fuses that you install.
Fuses are cheap.
They are. They're way cheap when you have a $600, $700 radio.
Yeah.
So it's,
Now this one shows a 25 amp blade fuse. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, just by looking at the connector, the white connector, that's for an HF rig. That's not for a 2-meter or a dual band. Reason I know that, because you can see there's 4 wires going into it. The HF will take 2 110 power supplies into the, because it splits it out, one transmit, one receive. Some radios have 200 watts output, and that's how they'll split. One will go over to the amplifier. So how can hams protect against electrical shock? Simple. In an electrical circuit, the purpose of a fuse is to remove power in case of overload. Very simple. We just said it. Never install a higher fuse than what should be. All right, George.
Gremlins, dude.
Oh, what the hell's going on?
Arrow on your keyboard.
Huh?
Use the arrows on your keyboard, left and right.
They don't work, I know. Okay.
do you want my laptop?
So, never install a higher amperage fuse. We talked about that. Okay, a 5 amps fuse should never be replaced with a 20 amp fuse, or excessive current could cause a fire. Very simple. We talked about that. It's a good practice to install fuses on both leads of a battery powered station, such as a mobile station, with fuses installed closest to the battery as connections will allow. And sometimes you can't get them up there just because of the holders. And you got to have a certain amount of pigtail to get connected. So,
So even though I don't have mobile at my house, I run my HF radio on a battery, and same thing.
yep.
Even though I can see everything and I know what the cables are, I still put the fuses on it because the charging device could overload and give me excessive current as well.
I do it on all my HF because they're either mobile or home, and I never know where they're going to be, so a double fuse them for that reason is safer in the long run. Any questions on this one? Okay, what are the basic precautions with batteries? Now, you're going to hear a lot of conflicting information. Your latest batteries are a pain in the, I don't know if you've seen the news down in Macomb County this last weekend, where they had a warehouse literally blow up, sent canisters flying through the air. Young man, 19 years old, a quarter mile away, was filming it, got hit in the head by shrapnel. Matt and I were at a Homeland Security meeting this morning, and the state police lieutenant was explaining what he had found out. They still don't know the cause. But they brought the bomb squad, state police bomb squad in, because there were so many of these canisters laying on roofs. Yeah, the average firefighter would not know what to do with them, but that is a problem. And everybody's on the city manager down there, everything, you know, the fire, but why didn't you know about this? Well, we can't just go barging into buildings and check. The law says we can't. But if somebody reports something that's bad, then we can. And as long as nobody reports it, it's kind of hard. Okay. Charging or discharging a battery too quickly can cause overheating or outgassing.
And that is the primary for all your new EVs, all your EV bikes. There's a reason that EV bikes are not allowed on Mackinac Island.
Or they don't allow them charging their batteries in the house anymore
Yep, exactly.
because of that.
Because of that exact Charging too quickly, overcharging, all of these things, and it applies to radios too.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a bank of handhelds in the closet that we use for emergency management, and we've got to be paying attention to, you know, how do we stack them up? How are we using the electricity for that bank of radios, and what are we trying to charge? How long are we charging things?
The NiCad battery, which are in most of these radios because of the old style, are pretty forgiving. Not 100% compared to the ion lithium. You got a whole new ball game there. And that means your little baby's right here.
I was just about to say, there was that issue 5-10 years ago now where cell phones were just starting fires in people's pockets because they're burning holes right through people's pockets. And then,
Well, it's when they first came out with the ion, the lithium batteries. Everybody thought they were the greatest thing in the world. I don't know well, this is even longer before that. There was a Florida airline, took off out of Miami, and they had a bunch of these batteries with cylinders in the belly. Took the plane down. That's when we first started realizing that, hey, we got a problem. And it's just, they really haven't addressed. Now, the good thing is, firefighters are being trained. There's classes. There's a class in Prestfield County this weekend. Cranes has had numerous classes here for fire departments. Sheboygan High School has classes. They're teaching firefighters what to do with these batteries. What we tell you is only charge them for the recommended amount of time. Take them out of the charger, off the charger, whatever. Because you never know when one of them things are going to go wonky.
And I've mentioned a few times, but again, read the manual. There's a lot of great information in there. It'll tell you how the manufacturer designed everything to work. I know it can be annoying, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. So
They're built for, printed for a reason. Okay, what are the precautions? Charging or discharging batteries too quickly can cause overheating. Okay. Shorting battery terminals. The safety hazard of a 12-volt storage battery is that shorting the terminal can cause burns, fire, or an explosion. Most of your car batteries today are sealed. There still are some that you can add water to. Still think those are the safest, unfortunately. It's easy to overcharge a sealed car battery, and one that everybody forgets about and doesn't pay attention to, discharging a car battery too rapidly does the same exact thing, creates heat within the battery.
So if you are using a car battery to power your home rig, and you're like most of us that, well, I've got some extra cables, and I've got some extra wire, and I've got an extra antenna, you've got to be paying attention to where that battery is. Is it covered up? Is there a way for the cat or the kid or whatever to knock something over on that battery? Because this is the safety net.
but also off-gassing. If you have it in a box sealed, it will fill with, is it hydrogen?
Hydrogen,
Yes.
yeah.
That could blow up.
Correct.
And they say keep in a well-ventilated area. No?
How many man caves are in basements in, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, as I say, I have solar at my house and I have iron nickel batteries, which off-gas hydrogen and oxygen. And my batteries are actually in a box with a brushless fan pumping or circulating air out to the outside world. The bottom of the box is open, so I have flow coming from the bottom of the box and then being sucked out of the box and out of the house. I think it was 2 years ago, the fan died. They were supposed to last 10 years and it lasted 4. And it set off our CO detectors, because CO detectors will get a false reading off of hydrogen. So that's something to be aware of if you're CO. Obviously, you want to open the windows like you would if you had CO, but
And then get out of the house.
yeah, get out of the house.
And
So I ended up having to shut everything down, so I had to kill the power in my house to figure out what was going on. Because I only had, gas, and I only have one gas appliance, which is sealed. So it took me about 2 days to figure out what was really going on.
And don't think you're alone too when you're building something like a battery box or something like that. There are, Mike here, he's experienced with it, he's done it. There's lots of hands that have messed with stuff and tried stuff, so, hit up the group chat, come to a meeting and say, hey, this is what I'm looking at doing.
And then we'll all just emerge on your place.
Okay, what are good safety practices with towers and antennas? Okay, when climbing an antenna tower, it is required to have sufficient training on the tower climbing techniques, to use appropriate tie-off to the tower at all times, to always wear an approved climbing harness. Oh, that is so, so critical. Other than an OSHA violation, it's life. If you don't wear the proper harness, you're asking to get hurt. It is never safe to climb a tower without a helper or observer. Amen. Never try to be.
Yeah, one of the things, last year I was given a tower that I had to take down, and one of the guys on our group, Shannon, I knew he had training, and so I did a lot of discussion with him beforehand. He told me, he's like, you need to buy this, you need to buy this, and we're gonna do this, that, and the other thing. And he's actually trained to the point that he is certified to go up a tower to get somebody down. I'm not there yet. I need to take the classes, but.
So.
He's
when
trained in
you're-
high angle rescue.
Right.
So, and as you're setting up whatever you're doing at home, think about the resources like we were talking about. So if you're gonna put a small tower up so that you can get some antennas out, so you can get some signal, once you get into, high frequency, those types of things, use the resources. Because, the Saturday afternoon, I'll be fine, I'll put it up myself.
And those are the ones that we read about as a silent key.
Yep.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
One of the things, real quick, one of the things he taught me was, they say never climb without an observer or helper, but actually have 3 people. One person's job is to call 911. They're not to do anything else. And when I took this tower down, my wife was that person. She's like, I don't want to, but I will if I have to. But so that way, because if something does happen, your helper is there to help you. The third person is to get more resources.
An important safety precaution to observe when putting up an antenna tower is to look for and stay clear of any overhead electrical wires. That to me is the most common sense in the world. But people avoid it. They don't think know the height of your antenna and tower that you're putting up, know what its fall angle is, because nothing stays up forever. And we do have winds up here. When installing an antenna, the minimum safe distance from a power line is enough so that if the antenna falls, no part of it can come closer than 10 feet to the power line. I always say 20, but 10 foot is the answer. The farther away, the better you are. Avoid attaching an antenna to a utility pole. Amen. Because the antenna could contact high voltage power line. Power company ever found you do that, you'd be in a lot of doo-doo.
Well, you're going for that long wire.
Yeah. Okay, what are good safety practices with towers and antennas? Guidelines. A safety wire through a turnbuckle used to tension guidelines prevents loosening of the turnbuckle from vibration. You can see it in here. This is your turnbuckle. You notice your guide wires come down to here. This will keep it from loosening up. Notice how all 3 come in here, go into the ground. Again, you have a grounding wire. 8 foot down.
One thing I've noticed, my tower's been up now for maybe 4 months, and there's a good windy day. I can look out my window and I can see the lines
Oh, yeah.
vibrating. So, I mean, the wind is, and on a good hard wind, I will actually hear the line resonating.
Okay, so your answer here is guidelines, safety wire through a turnbuckle, used to tension guidelines, prevents loosening of the turnbuckle from vibration. Important safety rule to remember when using a crank-up tower is that this type of tower must not be climbed unless it is retracted or mechanically safely locked device has been installed. Okay, what practice can mitigate the effects of lightning? Mitigating nearby lightning strikes effects on an antenna or tower involving taking steps to shunt the conducted current to the ground instead of it to the radio shack. Oh. Okay, direct lightning strikes are rare, and mitigating direct strikes effects is usually only partially effective. Boy, that is so true, so true. Because that lightning is traveling at such a speed that nothing stops. Grounding requirements for amateur radio towers or antennas are established by local electrical codes. A good section there, they're showing you the ground rods. They're only showing one bonded circle. What does Jim always recommend? 12? It's a bunch. You make a...
One of the other good reasons why to ground your tower is you don't want the lightning to go into the concrete because it will blow the concrete
apart. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
you want to get that electricity.
Or it's going to come in the house and you're going to have a big fire. Grounding for lightning for towers, a proper grounding method is to use separate 8-foot ground rods for each tower leg, bonded to the tower and to each other. Very simple. That is an answer. Just another safety. Okay, practice can mitigate, what practices can mitigate the effects of lightning? Okay, what they're showing you here in the picture, a couple of we refer to as bus bars, where you have pieces of copper where your coax comes into. The top one is just a feed point showing you the copper leads to the ground. I would not recommend that one. The second one, you have a nice bus bar, kind of protected, 2 lightning arresters. I don't see where that bus bar's taken to ground. That's another one. It's got to go to.
It looks like that's the inside of the same one you're seeing on the outside there.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Interior. Some people put them on the outside, some put them on the inside, whichever is the simplest, but that's a good way to go to ground. Okay, what practice can mitigate the effects of lightning? Mitigating nearby lightning strikes effects on an antenna or tower involves taking steps to shunt the conducted current to ground instead of it to the radio. Direct lightning strikes are rare, mitigating effects really don't work. Ground rods. All external ground rods or earth connections should be bonded together with heavy wire or conductive straps. I always tell them number 8, stranded copper, if you can't get the copper straps. Huh?
Bigger the better.
Yeah, and if you got bigger, it's just a pain to work with, that's all. Lightning arresters in a coax feed line should be installed on a grounded panel near where feed line enters the building. Another answer, as it shows. Lightning arresters are very fast-acting fuses designed for use in RF feed lines. The arresters break or interrupt conduct when very strong currents are detected in the feed line, such as formed from a surge of conducted current due to strong RF emission. by a nearby lightning strike or due to direct strike current. So like I said, a direct strike, your chances of that lightning arrestor breaking are 50-50. Sure we got everything. Okay. I don't know what part, if this is part of that or not.
That's
Yeah.
part two,
Huh?
It's the part 2, RF radiation, yeah.
13.2.
Okay, you want me to keep going or you guys want to break? Okay. Radio signals are non-ionizing radiation. RF radiation differs from ionizing radiation or radioactivity in that it does not have sufficient energy to cause chemical changes in cells and damage DNA. Okay, what kinds of radiation is RF energy? Radio signals are not ionized radiation. RF radiation differs from ionized radiation or radioactivity in that it does not have sufficient energy to cause chemical changes in cells and damage DNA. RF exposure can still be harmful by heating tissue beyond the body's ability to remove the absorbed heat. The FCC has established exposure limits for RF radiation to which amateur stations must adhere. Another answer, the station license is responsible for ensuring that no person is exposed to RF energy above the FCC limits. We'll also tell you that they have now come out, anybody that has an HF station, you've got to do a formula. It's available at the American Radio Relay League to be sure that you're not exposing your neighbor or people passing by to any radiation as such. The good thing, sometimes it's a pain. Now, one of the things, portables. 5 watts, the FCC is limited to VHF, 4 watts to UHF. Now, if you decide to get a Bofang, be very, very careful. Bofang is bragging that they've got a 7 and a 10 watt. The reason FCC went to 5 and 4 is your noggin. The radiation that antenna puts off can harm you. The other thing is the cops don't realize it, but they're carrying them on their belt by their kidneys. You will see that later. A lot of officers come down with kidney problems, and it's because of that portable. So, listening is fine, talking. And the other thing is, you'll see guys with a portable, like this, or you'll even see them like totally worthless. If you're going to talk from here to the other side of the room, the proper way to use a handheld, A, get it up here because the microphone's way up here. The other thing is it gets it above your head. Simple. And I love the guys that are talking like this. Well, it's going straight up and straight down. You're getting a good path to wherever you want to go. Okay.
One thing this does touch on is heating tissue. If you have a long wire or a vertical antenna and you have it low to the ground, just be careful. It's a good to get it up, because if a kid walks through something like that, what's this? They could touch it. If you're broadcasting, it can cause a burn on there.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the higher you put it, the better. Not only for reception, but people are stupid.
Yeah.
So
we talk about that in the military. Do not touch the antenna on the truck when you're
Oh, no.
transmitting.
Yeah, not those. Or actually, even an FM transmitter can get up to 100 watts. You don't want to touch it. UHF, back in the early 70s, my wife worked for Motorola. And the guys play around at night or try to impress a fire chief or some cement mixer. One guy'd sit in the car and open the transmitter up, and the other guy'd have one of the 45-watt fluorescent light bulbs, and he'd run it up and down the antenna, and gee, the fluorescent bulb would light up. Well, you can do that with, if you got a 40-watt UHF, you can do it today.
Keep a
Okay.
high freak off the EH helicopters when the new LTs walk by. Make sure they don't reproduce.
A brief sideline on RF burns. An RF burn is not due to RF radiation exposure, but rather to RF electrical current passing through your tissue. Okay, the answer: an RF burn to skin is hazardous created by touching the antenna during transmission. Well, I don't care if you touch it like it says with your finger. If you grab it like that, you definitely are going to have a hand. It's almost as bad as sticking your hand into a microwave when it's going. When an antenna transmits a high power level is touched, the RF current is typically routed through the contact surface area of the touch. The fingertip touch will receive a high density of current and a more severe burn than a full palm grip. RF burns are deep and painful, and they take a long time to heal. The typical 5 watts of a HT is not sufficient to impose an RF burn, but a 50-watt mobile station with vehicle mount antenna can produce a burn very easily. Okay, what factors contribute to RF exposure? These factors affect the RF exposure of people near an amateur station antenna, frequency and power levels of the RF field, distance from the antenna to a person, radiation patterns of the antenna. That is why your 2-meter 440s are put up on the roof of a house. Also, a lot of people like to use vertical HF. They get further away from people. But everybody seems to forget that RF does come down through the house. So you got to be careful. Frequency exposure limits vary with frequency because the human body absorbs more energy at some frequencies than at others. True. The lowest value of maximum permissible exposure current with the 50 megahertz frequency. Okay. Distance. Relocating antennas can reduce exposure to RF radiation. Yes. Just like I say, you want to get them high and out of the way where people are not going to be, and they're not going to be coming down through the roof. Even a 25-watt 2-meter transmission. A good example I'll give you, I don't know if you've seen these nightstand lights where you just touch them and they go on. Well, my daughter had one upstairs, and if I key the 2-meter rig up, her light would go bonkers. It was a cheap Chinese. What factors contribute to RF? Wait a minute, we just did that. Oh, no, wait a minute. What factors contribute to RF exposure? Duty cycle. During the averaging time for RF exposure, duty cycle is a percentage of time that a transmitter is transmitting. 2 meters, you're limited to 5 minutes because the repeater has a timeout timer on it. So you're going to have 5 minutes maximum talk. HF, you could keep that thing keyed as long as you don't blow the transmit end out of it. And you will see, and once you get into listening on HF, especially 20 meters, there's guys that can talk for a half hour and never let up on the key. They got to have some good transmitters. Duty cycle affects the average exposure to radiation. So it is one of the factors used to determine safe RF radiation levels. Okay? Example, duty cycle. Transmit 40% of the time, listen 60. So the duty cycle is 40%, 0.4. If the duty cycle changes from 100 to 50%, the allowable power density for RF safety increases by a factor of 2. Auto hams ensure their station is in compliance with FCC exposure limits. Acceptable methods of determining whether your station complies with FCC RF exposure regulations. By calculations based on FCC OET Bulletin 65, by calculations based on computer modeling, by measurements of field strength using calibrated equipment. ARRL has on their web page a complete diagram of how to do this and what to use and what to look for. How do hams ensure the station is in compliance? You can make sure your station stays in compliance with RF safety rules by reevaluating the station whenever an item in the transmitter or antenna system is changed. In other words, just common sense. Okay, engineering technology, they also have it on the FCC site of what you can look for and how to do it. Online exposure calculator based on OET Bulletin 65. Again, take your time to do that. Exposure may be found online. RF exposure calculator can help you there.